Hi, this is Andy Turner, the Education Technologist at Illinois College. Today I wanted to show how to use HTML to turn on and off canvas tags in the browser. So you can load a div and then have a button execute a function on multiple elements. And I'm taking this video remotely. So using the Connect camera here, so you can do some background removal stuff. And I'll go ahead and, it's enough with all that here at my new desk on the beach, and you can sort of, float around, so it's kind of a, cosmic sort of thing. Anyway, so we've got Vim here on the left, and then on the right we've got HTML. I want to take you through a few things where you can see how functions relate to HTML elements. So here in Vim we're declaring a couple of CSS classes, and I can share this code out with anyone who wants it. But here on line 19, as you can see in Vim, we've got an off class and an on class. Classes have a dot, and then IDs have a hashtag. So if you're one of these hipsters who likes to use hashtags on the Twitter and on the Facebook, you can use these hashtags. Just kidding. But you can actually relate elements to one another on the web page, where you have a relative position, but then a sort of a static positioning. So here we have computer 1 and computer 2. Over on the right, if you hit show computers, there's a function that grabs a hold of the computer 1 and computer 2 IDs. So this is a computer 1 and computer 2 ID on the web page, and they belong to the class by default off. Now there is a function that I wanted to show called RGB, and there's RGBA. So this is the amount of red, the amount of green, blue, and alpha. Here I have 0.5. and that's just the opacity, so you can see through the red there. Now, there are other IDs on the page, nav left, right, content, and so forth, and this is still in the style element, or the style tag of the page. So here we start with the JavaScript. So we have CSS, now JavaScript, all inline just for convenience. There's a function called ToggleState, and what this does is it sets the class name to on if it's off, and vice versa. So if you click it, what's happening is it's executing the ToggleState function, and it's taking in an item that's just a parameter. That name item doesn't have any special meaning until it kind of gets input into this function, and I'll show you where that's called. Down here we call the function ToggleState when we handle the onClick method of the computer 1 and computer 2 elements. So we're calling onClick here for these two elements, and we're going to some other place. Computer.com is a popular place for the kids on the internet these days, and so you can go to a YouTube video or something. Now, where we define the function that's being called, sorry if that's making you seasick, we define computer 1 and computer 2 classes and IDs up here on the on and off. So what's happening is when we call that toggle function, by default it's off, and we're using that as the class name of those elements, and then we're defining an on class that turns it to sort of a red highlight. So you have to define the type of CSS, then you have to define the element, and then you have to implement the behavior. And here in red you can see that onClick is an attribute in the button element. So computer 1 and computer 2 are being sent as parameters to the ToggleState function here. And again, down below, that's being handled by the listener event called onClick, which is a DOM API method, and that's actually just redirecting the user to another URL so that when I click over here on the right, I can go to a new site. Now this is a div in the background. These are divs in the background. This is a background image, and these elements that I'm revealing here, these are actually HTML5 canvas elements, and these could be HTML5 audio or video elements as well that you could superimpose over elements. So you can sort of have what I like to call a Z-axis to this web page. Yes, it's 2D graphics, but you're actually conceptually overlaying layers of meaning on top of one another. So, for example, this red canvas element is, so to speak, above, like if you're in Photoshop, for example, it's above the background image. So you can arrange layers much like you would, in a desktop publishing application. So that's just an overview of how one can associate the positioning of CSS elements as child elements of other elements so that they inherit their class, number one, and it establishes the relationship by which the relative positioning applies. So what I mean by that is the floor plan container div here is this sort of lightish blue. That is the floor plan container div. Now, I have the canvas elements as children of that div, and in doing so, the relationship to the parent div floor plan container gives you the opportunity to use something in CSS called the relative positioning instead of the absolute positioning. So just the last thing up here at the top, we can say that relative to the parent element, in this case the floor plan container div, we're putting this red square 403 pixels from the left and 50 pixels down. So that's 400 from here and 50 down, not from the window. If you do not put the canvas element in another div or in a parent div container, so to speak, then its parent will be the window object. And so 403 pixels would be here, but not here. If you do not do the relative attribute, what's going to happen to you is for your page, the red squares are not going to follow the image, because again, they are above the image, and the red squares would be out here somewhere, which is not what you want, and that would have happened if you had the position absolute. We learned that today. So that's CSS positioning in a nutshell. We have the RGBA method on the on class and off class, two different ways. You can also do the hashtag color type for background color like so. We see how we arrange divs on the web page, and most importantly, we see how we can have a comma separated list of attributes, a comma separated list of function calls, on the onClick attribute of a button, for example, or an HTML element. So an HTML element, the li tag can get its styling, and then the button element gets its own ID, and it does have the ability to call functions that will be executed when you call the onClick method of the DOM API. So when you click that button, in other words this button, it's calling the function ToggleState on not only computer 1, but as you can see it's actually semicolon delimited, the semicolon delimited list of function calls with their parameters. In these cases, computer 1 and computer 2 are the parameters, and then we essentially give those parameters down to the function. In this case, it's going to be the function up in the style tag that we defined. We declared that function called ToggleState, and in this case computer 1 and computer 2 are being executed and called. So this is what's happening when that function is called. Item, one at a time, is being given. Computer 1 is executing that. If it's off, it's changing to on, and vice versa. And then computer 2 is coming in there. Item is the new name for computer 2. That parameter is being parsed by the ToggleState function, and then item's class name is being evaluated here. So that's HTML, JavaScript, and CSS in a nutshell. Hope that you've enjoyed the tutorial. This is in our Adobe Creative Cloud training series here from the very beautiful and balmy Bahamas. Thanks a lot and have a great weekend.